Thank you guys for having us. Thank you, Corey, for organizing all of this. It's wonderful to be here. I'll admit, I'm not from North Carolina, but whenever I come down, you make me feel like I'm at home. You make me feel like I'm family, so I appreciate that. Yesterday, when I was looking around the room and seeing all the churches represented, seeing all the organizations and networks, I thought of 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 12, that says this. Just as a body, though one has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. Yes, I see many parts represented, whether it's CFR, whether it's, Passion for Planting, E-teams, networks, churches. It's easy for us to kind of work separated, but we do better together. That's what we talked about yesterday. And today I'm going to be talking about just a couple systems that helps bodies function properly. Right? I don't know much about the human body, but I know that I've got systems that are right now that are working to help me function properly. Muscles, skeleton, immune system, all these interconnected parts that, well, when they work together, I'm able to be healthy. The same is true with the church. The same is true with the Carolina movement. We can do better together. A better way forward is to work together. And the first thing I want to talk about, the first system, is this idea of project management. What was this project management that Chris just talked about? Let me set the stage this way. In 1993, Brett Andrews had a vision to plant a church-planting church. Not just one church, but a church that would plant churches that would plant churches. He was planting this church in the western suburbs of D.C., and he got about 8 people together in a basement, and they just started praying about it. God, that's our vision. How can we do this? They really didn't know what they were going to do, how to do it, but that was their vision. And they prayed, and they prayed, and they prayed. Brett was friends with a man who had come to Christ in a previous ministry. He was in the nuclear navy, worked on nuclear submarines. He was a very smart guy, engineer kind of guy, systems and processes guy. And he told this guy's name is Todd Wilson, and Brett says, Todd, we're going to start a church-planting church, a church that starts churches that starts churches. And Todd says, that's great, Brett, but how are you going to do it? And Brett says, I have no idea. But maybe you can help us do that. Maybe you can help us do that. And Todd's like, that's crazy. Like, I've got a career. Okay, tell me how it goes. Todd ends up going to Maine, oversees this nuclear place in Maine, and he's leading that for a while. Eventually, he says, all right, Brett, I'm giving up my career in the Navy. I'm going to help New Life plant churches that are going to plant churches that are going to plant churches. But one thing we got to figure out, so what did you do to start New Life? Like, what was the process for you starting New Life? Brett, kind of proud of himself, is like, well, I used Bob Logan's toolkit. Bob Logan back in the day had his planting toolkit, where you would write out all the things you needed to do on a Post-it note, then put it on your wall, try to put them all in the right order, and then you would just go and try to do it. So this was Brett's checklist, his planning checklist. And the good thing, Brett was like, hey, you know what's good about this? If you don't get the thing done, you just move it down the list, right? Just move it to the right a little bit. It's like, eventually you'll get there. Well, Todd, as this nuclear engineer, wasn't too impressed. He's kind of like, I think we can do better when it comes to planting churches. And so him and Brett, they sat in the basement for about 3 days and just started asking all these questions. What were the questions you had to ask, Brett, in order to plant New Life? And then Todd started working with other church planters, started asking them the same question, like, what was your process? What were the questions you were asking? And he found out that most planters were asking the exact same questions. They had the same problems they had to figure out. And so they came up with a list of 800 questions. 800 things you got to be wrestling with in order to plant a healthy, multiplying church. You got to contextualize it to your vision, to your context, but you got to wrestle with these questions. So he turned it into this checklist to help church planters say, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Let's take what other church planters have done before us and help them out. And in this process, Todd started talking with these church planters. He was interviewing, helping them, and he started asking them this question. So what are you spending your time doing in the couple months leading up to your launch Sunday? Okay, you're getting ready to launch a church. What's consuming your time? He expected to hear things like, well, I'm out in the community. I'm out building relationships. I'm out discipling people. I'm networking with community leaders. I'm building leaders. It's like, That's what he expected them to hear, what he expected them to say, what he was hoping to hear. But he kept on hearing one thing after another was, I'm struggling with figuring out how to file articles of incorporation. You know, I'm building a website. I'm shopping for insurance. He's like, you're spending your time in an office, cooped up in an office, when you should be out building a launch team. When you should be out evangelizing, discipling, building a launch team. Yeah. He was like, okay, this is not right. I can't let this happen. And so he came up with this idea of project management. Said, number one, a lot of church planters are doing things not the right way. He's like, you should have been worried about this thing months ago. You should have been figuring this out months ago, instead of doing it right now. And so he said, let's help church planters do the right things in the right order, and let's kind of do some things for them. One church planter that he was interviewing, he said he was helping them with some direct mail. This guy had just sent thousands and thousands of postcards announcing their launch of their Sunday morning gatherings, inviting people to come, inviting the community to come. And he said this church planter sent out thousands of cards announcing the launch of their church, their grand opening, and they didn't have a website on the cards. So no way for people to go and learn more about the church. And it wasn't that they had kind of like missed it, like, oh, we forgot to put the church website on. They didn't have a church website yet. He's like, you just spent thousands and thousands of dollars advertising your church, and nobody knows anything about your church or how to go about finding more information about your church. He's like, man, we need to help church planters focus on doing the right things in the right order, in the right way. And so he came up with this idea of church plant project management, where our church planter, like Patrick Bradley, myself, other people, that we come alongside of a church planter and say, hey, this checklist, we've got a software system called Planner Plan. It's just a checklist that you could even use on your own. Like maybe there's somebody on your team who's very administratively gifted. And you can give them the software, and they can say, hey, these are the things that we need you to do. These are the things we need to focus on this week. Let's get these done, and then we can move on to the tasks next week. But if you were to work with pastoral planting, an organization like us, you would get a project manager that actually does the legal paperwork for you. You know, so you don't have to worry about that. I mean, imagine planting a church and not having to wonder about, like, how do I file articles of incorporation? Or like, what does it mean? Like, what do I need to file, to get my determination letter for 501c3 status? Do I need to, what kind of insurance should I get? What things should we be talking about at some of our initial board meetings? What board resolutions do we need to have? Like the project manager decides all that and does all that for you so that you don't have to worry about it. So you don't have to focus on tasks, but you get to focus on people. Yes, you get to focus on developing that launch team, reaching people, making disciples who make disciples. So Proverbs 11:14 says this: where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in abundance of counselors, there is safety. And project management offers church planters this counsel and this guidance, so you can be confident that you're doing the right things in the right order to plant healthy churches that are going to multiply. I know in my experience church planting, that was my question, was like, what do we do? What do we do? And then we got connected with Passion for Planting. It gave me so much confidence to be like, okay, here's our game plan. Let's work the game plan, do these things in this way. So one thing we learned about church planters, working with church planters for a long time, is, yeah, they're not the greatest with details. They need people to come alongside of them to help them set up those systems and processes, to be those administrative people for them. But another thing we also learned with church planters is, hey, they're pretty confident. They're a pretty confident bunch, right? You got to be confident if you're going to be a church planter. And sometimes that confidence is a little bit too overconfident, a little cockiness, and we're like, do I really need training? Like, I think I'm already ready. I think I'm ready for this. Don't slow me down. I'm ready to do this. And we're filled with vision and with passion, and we think that that's all we need, right? We're kind of like that young couple that meets in college. Right? It's a walk to remember by September. It's a kiss by Christmas. It's a ring by spring. And, that couple, they're getting married. Right? They're getting married. And maybe you were that couple. I don't know. Maybe we were that couple. But nothing's going to keep you apart. Right? You're infatuated with this vision for what's going to come, what God has for your future. And other people can see the red flags. Other people can see the red flags. But you can't see the red flags when you're wearing rose-colored glasses, right? You know, right? Everything's in HD now. Everything, colors are brighter. You know, your sense of smell is just more sensitive. And all of a sudden it's like, love is going to keep us together forever. And sometimes, you know, young couples, they just don't know what they don't know, right? They've never been married before. And same thing is kind of true with church planters. Our friend John Rooster, he says all church planters are drunk on vision. Right? They're just intoxicated with this vision for what could be and what should be and what's happening, what God's going to do in the future. Plans, strategies, training. Who needs that? We've got vision. And vision and passion, that's enough. But let's say that young couple comes to you, okay? They're ready to get married, and you're their pastor, and they're like, hey, we're in love. Would you officiate our wedding? You know, what would you say? How would you respond to that? I would imagine most of us would be like, hey, that's great. I'm so happy for you. But let's make sure you're ready for this commitment that you're about to make, for this journey that you're about to go on. And you would probably say, hey, let's do some premarital counseling. Right? Let's do some premarital counseling so you can, you know, see a little bit more objectively who you guys are together. And you can understand maybe some of the challenges that are going to come, but also have some tools in your marriage toolbox to help you invest in that relationship for the long term. Not just for right now, but for the long term. Learn how to communicate. Learn how to handle your finances and what's your vision for kids, and right? So you can be on the same page and work together towards this healthy marriage. The same thing is true with church planting. That's why we've developed residency programs to help equip church planters with tools that are going to help them build strong launch teams, that are going to help them build a budget, that are going to help them make disciples who make disciples. You know, Abraham Lincoln once said this. He says, if I had an hour to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 45 minutes sharpening my axe. Preparation is key. It's true in church planting. Ecclesiastes 10:10 says this. If the axe is dull, and no one just sharpens its edge, then one must exert more strength. However, the advantage of wisdom is that it brings success. The NIV says the advantage is that skill brings success. Yes, preparation is key. Church planting, sometimes we don't get that. Sometimes church planters are overconfident and we just don't realize we don't know what we don't know. I know that was me. Filled with vision of planting church, and I was like, man, this is so great, we're going to get people together. And we got people together, and then I was like, now what do we do with everybody? What do we do now? I wish we had some training that would have helped us.